Who is technically still on spring break? Few. Who gets to continue spring break tomorrow? I heard this like crazy thing that like they give you an extra day of not having Monday, and then you guys go back on Tuesday? Is that right? No? You're on this week? Oh, all right. You're on this week, so you just started. Who's just started spring break? Oh, well, congratulations. This is an exciting week. When like everybody else is back at school, you guys get to be like, so awesome. All right, well, it's so great to see you guys. Missed you all. It's been a couple weeks. We are going to start by playing a game. All right, and this is a game that I'm going to have one of the small group leaders keep score. So each table is a team. So, fellas, look around. Okay, so. We got, the boys have 3 chances to win this over the girls, but, I don't know, I think it's a toss-up, so we'll see how this goes. All right, so, and I do have prizes, so it's worth your while to pay attention and try to do well here, okay? All right, so here's the game. The game is called Spy the Lie, all right? And let me first disclose that I did not validate the truthfulness of these answers. And so I basically took this very fun game from a previous year's confirmation class because I went through it and I'm like, this looks fantastic. So I cannot personally attest to the accuracy of which is the lie versus what is not the lie. I'm just going to go off of the answers that were provided for me, and we're all just going to take it as what it is. So if any of you have disputes, you can check with the producer in the back. Okay, so here's the way this works. In this game, you're going to be shown 3 facts. 2 facts are true. 1 is a lie, and you got to pick the one that is the lie. Okay, so we have 10 questions. All right, and so you're all going to keep score. One of your leaders is going to keep score, and then at the end, we're going to tally. And whoever gets the most number of correct answers is the winning table. All right? Sound good? Okay, so here is the first one. Okay? So you got to find the lie. Someone paid $10,000 for invisible artwork. The small intestine is shorter than the large intestine. And the CIA tried to develop a group of spy cats. Okay, so you got to come up and decide amongst the group what your answer is. All right? Can't debate on this for very long. You got 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lock in your answer. Lock in your answer. And the answer is, any guesses? Number 2. That is correct. Okay. Does anybody know if the CIA really tried to develop a group of spy cats? Okay. That sounds like a Saturday Night Live skit or something. All right, ready for the next one? Okay, 152 people in the U.S. are named LOL. The first pair of shoes was made from rabbit, and that word is the fear of being watched by a duck. Okay? Confer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lock in your answers. And the answer is number 2. The first pair of shoes was made from rabbit. Yeah, that would have been sad if somebody made a pair of shoes from a rabbit. But really, LOL, do you think they pronounce it hey LOL, how you doing? Or is it hey lol? What do you think? Would anybody wish your parents named you LOL? All right. Does anybody have a fear of being watched by a duck? Is that you do? Oh, okay. All right, well, we'll pray for you. All right, here we go. Number 3. Okay. The Cookie Monster's real name is Billy. Peanuts are used to make dynamite, and the tallest man ever was 8 feet 11 inches. All right, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lock in your answers. The answer is Cookie Monster's real name is not Billy. But the question is, what is it? What? Sid? Sid? I didn't know that. I've never bothered to ask the question, what's Cookie Monster's real name? I didn't know that.
They use molasses to make dynamite, but it's...
Yeah, like I said, I cannot vouch for the accuracy of these answers, but we're going to go with the answers. Okay, here we go. The blob of toothpaste that sits on your toothbrush is called a nurdle. You have the same number of bones in your hands as in your feet. And you are twice as likely to be killed by a vending machine than a shark. Okay. Remember, you're picking the lie. You're picking the lie, all right? So that means there are actually 2 of these that are actually true. Okay? Lock in your answer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The lie is. Okay. All right. So, nurdle. Anybody, were you all familiar with that term before this? You learn something every day. And also, watch out for those vending machines. Those can be a little bit dicey. All right, here we go. Canada is south of Detroit. Dolly Parton once lost a Dolly Parton lookalike contest. And octopuses have 2 hearts. Okay. Alright, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Answer is octopuses do not have 2 hearts. Does anybody know how many hearts octopuses do have? 3? 9? I don't know. Okay. Here we go for the next one. A car engine can run on 5-hour energy drink. Polar bears have black skin, and a platypus does not have a stomach. Okay. Lock in your answers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Don't those things come in little bottles about this big? How many of those would you even need to pour into a gas tank to even test that theory? Just out of curiosity. Maybe you can buy 4 cases of this. So, all right. And where does the platypus put their food? See, these are questions. That you can go home. We piqued your curiosity. All right, next one. Okay, number 1, Miss Piggy and Yoda are voiced by the same person. The muscles in your fingers are stronger than your biceps. And Princess Diana's funeral was watched by 2.5 billion people. Crazy. All right, let's lock it in. 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Answer. Yeah. I mean, do you want to like arm wrestle like with your finger or somebody? That just seems like not a fair fight. Okay. Anybody get that right? Alright. Okay, here we go. German chocolate cake was named after Sam German, who is American. Hawaiian pizza was created in Ontario, Canada. And the first set of Peeps had a horn like a unicorn. Is any OG Peep fans?
So there's a truth to it.
Don't know what Peeps are, right? Oh, marshmallow rabbits. Any guesses? All right, lock it in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Answer. Peeps didn't have a horn and a unicorn, you sillies. Marshmallow bunny rabbits. And they're disgusting, by the way. Just, my own personal characterization. This is gross. Okay, next one. The red outfit of Santa Claus was invented in Russia in 1831. Humans cannot land on Saturn because it does not have a solid surface. And 99.9% of commercially grown artichokes are grown in one town in California. Okay. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, but then it begs the question, where did the red outfit on Santa come from? I have to figure that one out. But I can actually personally attest to the artichoke thing. There's actually an artichoke themed theme park. Right around, like the teacups at Disneyland or Disney World. Now they have artichokes that you can sit in and spin. It's great. And then they have artichoke mascots that walk around, like Oompa Loompas. They're a little scary. It really isn't. But you can get great artichokes from the stands on the street for way cheaper than you can at the grocery store. That was fun. Okay, moving on. More people visit the USA every year than any other country. That sounds like a rather egotistical statement of fact. The term freelancers comes from sword-wielding mercenaries. And the White House in Washington, D.C. has 35 bathrooms. This is the last one, so. Okay. Now lock it in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So that was our last one. So let's tally. Okay. So raise your hand if your group got one right. Just one. If you at least one correct. There we go. Okay. All right. Raise your hand. Keep your hands raised if you got 2 right. Keep your hands raised if you got 3 right. 4.
How many questions were there?
There were 10. Hopefully you have a tally. 5. 6. Okay, we got our first casualty. 7. 8. 9. Oh. 9? You guys got 9? Wow, good job, Group 8. Way to go. Now, In the event of if we had a tie, I did have a tiebreaker, so let's see what the tiebreaker question was, just for fun, just for kicks and giggles. All right. So, mosquitoes are the deadliest animal in the world. We talked about mosquitoes. The longest name of a city has 55 letters, and half of the Earth's population watched the 2018 FIFA World Cup, which may tell you how old these questions are. All right. Okay, who thinks, since this is not contributing towards anything, who thinks it's number one? Who thinks it's number two? And number three? Oh, no, you guys, there's like more soccer fans than anyone. Yeah. 55 minutes. So good job. Good job. All right. So I told you there were prizes, all right? So group A, really well done. Really well done. So here's your prize, okay? So here you go. All right, but before you crack into it, I want you to pick a number. And the number is 1, 2, or 3. 3? Okay. I want you to take your bag. All right. And in my head, I numbered these tables 1, 2, and 3. So you got to go hand your prize that you just won to the girls here. Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Now, we're going to talk about that here in a second. So, well, good job. Way to go. So, and girls, enjoy your prize that you didn't earn. No, you gave a valiant effort, but no, I just wanted it. Next time. All right. So, you guys. In that sheet that we did at the beginning, again, we've mentioned this many times, you asked so many great questions. And some of these I pulled straight from your sheets and asking really cool questions that you would ask God. And why did you fight for us and never give up? How can I get closer to you? What can I do to get to know you more? Why do you love us so much? All these great questions. And the answer to these questions, in so many respects, comes back to what we're going to talk about today, and that is grace. So let's start with defining grace. Okay? So grace is God's unmerited favor. What do you think the key word in that definition is? Yeah, say it again. Unmerited. Good job. Good job. Why is that the key word? What does unmerited mean? Come on, girls. What does unmerited mean? Okay, you just, yes.
Like undeserved or like you didn't do anything for it.
That's right. Kind of like when you earn a prize for a game that you didn't win, right? So, unmerited. That is very good. Okay. So, grace is God's unmerited favor. And what's amazing about this grace is that God extends this grace to all of us for no other reason other than the fact that he loves us. And there's nothing that any of us have done or could possibly do to earn or deserve the grace that God extends to us. And Scripture talks about this all over the place. And so in Ephesians 2:8, for by grace you have been saved through faith. This is not your own doing. It is a gift from God. So over the next couple weeks, we're going to be introducing you all to an individual named John Wesley. And John Wesley is the individual who kind of formed the Methodist church, and so there were John Wesley talked a lot about grace, and he actually put grace into 3 different categories that we're going to talk about. So the first category is prevenient The second category is justifying, and the third is sanctifying, okay? So what do these mean? So let's talk about prevenient grace, okay? So prevenient grace is the grace that comes before we're even aware of it. It is God's presence in our lives before we even realize it. And ultimately, it is the grace extended by God that ultimately leads to salvation. So it comes from what I believe is the Latin word for before and come. And I read, and I like this analogy of it's kind of like this notion of when somebody is swimming and needs some assistance, whether they realize it or not, and there is the life ring that is thrown. Now, the interesting thing about the life ring, for it to be effective, what does the swimmer need to do? What? Yeah, you got to grab onto it, okay? So, the life ring is only effective if the individual receiving the life ring actually, grabs onto the life ring, okay? And so what's interesting and where the correlation comes is that God extends us His grace. It's there for us all to receive. But yet, there's a step that we all have to take in order to receive it, right? It doesn't just magically, come into us. We have to receive it. We have to be willing to receive it. Which goes back to this notion that we've talked about over the course of several weeks, and this idea of how God didn't create us to be like automatons, robots that just automatically love Him and love others and so forth. It's a choice that we all have to collectively make for ourselves, right? So, this verse, I like, and it connects to this because it's this notion of how, God doesn't just knock on the door once, and then if we don't answer that first time, just move on to the next house. God is continuing to extend His grace to us, whether we realize that we need it or not. And so the Lord isn't slow to keep His promises. Some think of slowness, but He's patient towards you, not wanting anyone to perish, but to all to change our hearts and our lives. And one sort of additional visual that I thought was kind of funny to extend this, or to try and convey what preventing grace looks like. So it's this notion of, in many circumstances in life in which God, I think, tries to wake us up from the slumber that we find ourselves in, or in this concept that we don't need Him, we're completely self-sufficient on our own. And so I think there are circumstances in life that you all likely experience or will experience where it's kind of akin to, you're sleeping soundly in your bed, and then all of a sudden, your older brother shows up with a blowhorn in your room and blows it to wake you up, and so to wake us from our slumber. And so wakey, wakey, eggs, and bakey. By the way, when I was making this slide, I originally spelled bakey, B-A-C-E-Y, kind of because play off of bacon, and then my wife was like, no, that's just going to confuse people, so you got to spell it B-A-K-E-Y, so that was an intentional spelling, but, all right, any questions about preventing grace? Does that kind of make sense? Again, this grace of being there before we even realize that we need it. So moving on to justifying grace. So you all, over the last 2 weeks, have talked about sin and redemption. And so justifying grace is ultimately the grace that facilitates the redemption that all who believe in Jesus have received. And so you likely have seen or heard this notion of how, we're over here, on this side of the canyon, and God is over here, and so the bridge is the cross of Christ. And so it's this cross of Christ that is that justifying grace that we receive. And it is the mechanism by which God pardons us, restores us to a right relationship with God through Jesus. But again, it requires a response. It requires us saying yes to God's justifying grace that He offers. And this, you can remember of the receipt of justifying grace transforms us into a condition in which we it's as if if we've never sinned, just if I'd never sinned. You all may have seen this verse before out of Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. You all talked about that 2 weeks ago, starting with Adam and Eve and how everybody, we all sin, and nobody's excluded from that particular club. But the next verse is so reassuring that yet all are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Jesus Christ, Romans 3:24. And then Romans 11:6, but if it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. So the important idea here, going back to the question of what can I do to earn God's favor, to earn God's grace, the answer ultimately is to receive the grace that he's offered to us. And think that, we can't be good enough, we can't do enough things, to earn this grace. We have to receive it wholeheartedly in the manner that he offers it to us. So the last form of grace is sanctifying grace. And it's the grace that moves us closer to be the people that God calls us to be. And so this is the process after which we've said yes to the grace. We've said yes to Jesus, and now we're being continually drawn closer to God. We become more passionate servants of God. And so sanctification is a process that we experience throughout our entire lives, where God gives us the tools, but again, it's up to us to use those tools. So John Wesley further communicates or shares about this idea of there are several what he terms means of grace, and so it is these environments or actions that we can engage in to more richly experience God's grace. And so those four are acts of worship, so it's things like what you're doing right now. Acts of devotion, where we've talked about prayer, studying scripture, taking care of your body. Acts of compassion, doing good works, caring for other people. And acts of justice, seeking justice, ending oppression, caring for the poor, etc. So while there are no works that we can do that ultimately leads to our salvation, the notion of receiving grace is a transformational act, whereby by receiving God's grace, we become more inclined to want to naturally do and change our behaviors in a manner that God wants us to live in. One of the things, going back to this acts of worship, that I put on here of acknowledging the beauty of God's creation. And we talked about creation a few weeks back, and my encouragement to you guys in that was just to spend time outside and just take a moment to appreciate how amazing God's creation is. And so over spring break, I had the amazing opportunity to go to Hawaii, and on Hawaii's license plates, they have this rainbow on there. And so the first day that I was there, I took this particular picture from just outside the place that we were staying. It just, I just stood there and watched this rainbow and form, and it just was like this awe-inspiring moment of how God his creation is just so magnificent. And that in itself was an act of devotion, an act of receiving God's grace, of just an appreciation for him. So last, when it comes to in our faith with God, we can't be stagnant. And so my encouragement to you all is to embrace this notion of if we're not moving toward God, we're naturally moving away from him, because something is always pulling us or pushing us in one direction or another. And so by not accepting his grace, you are rejecting it. Where this hits home is in this idea of getting stuck in the mindset of, I don't deserve God's grace. I'm not worthy to receive it, so I'm not going to receive it. And that's something that I know, I myself have even struggled with this notion of God, I don't deserve to receive the love and grace and forgiveness that you have offered me. But yet, that's not the way that God has designed it. God has designed an and wants us to accept His grace and feel the freedom to accept His grace. Because otherwise, if I don't accept it, I'm ultimately rejecting it. All right. So we're going to move into our group discussion. And there are 3 questions that I'd like you guys to take some time sharing with one another. So the first is to talk about a time in which you received grace from someone else. Like somebody did something for you that maybe you didn't deserve. The second topic is to maybe share about a time in which you extended grace to someone else. How did that make you feel? How did that make the other person feel? And then this last question, is it hard for you to accept grace? Why or why not? Okay. All right. Any questions about that? So, and just so that my team winners don't feel left out, you guys get your prize. All right? Okay, get into it.